Are you a sex worker looking to build a new website or a website redesign? Then you'll want to consider Fox Digital. They did a fantastic job designing my website, Stripped by Sia. If you want your website done, mention that you're a listener of the show at foxdigital.design for 20% off. Tell them I sent ya. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am Steph Sia, aka the host of the show, editor, producer, one-woman show. I do this show every single week. I bring on different guests to illustrate a different part of the sex industry to help destigmatize the work that it is we do, because believe it or not, a lot of people believe it is not work, and it truly is. They've had almost 6 seasons of the show, just really trying to cover as much as I can in the industry. And honestly, I can probably do this show forever because I'm never going to know everything, and there's always something new and emerging, which is a little bit about what we're talking about today. But yeah, I just really want to be able to educate the masses as much as we can. There's a lot of fellow sex workers that listen to the show, but also a lot of civilian people or people that are very far away from our industry or have no connection to our industry, or a lot of people that are using the show to kind of just prep themselves and see if this is the right move for them in terms of career. So welcome all you new listeners out there. It's really cool that you're listening in. I myself am a sex worker, so I was a sugar baby a long time ago. That was kind of my formal entry into this line of work. I then started stripping and started doing a lot of different content creation, and now I'm kind of dabbling in the world of camming, which is also another piece of what we're going to be talking about today. But before we kind of dive into all of that, I am just wanting to say hello to my lovely Patreon subscribers. Hello, especially for those of you who are on the top tier. You all got a fun little fan recognition shout out on the show. Just want to welcome a new subscriber by the name of Guy or Guy. I'm not sure where you are from. I have a feeling you might be French, but maybe that's just me stereotyping. But hello and welcome. Thanks for subscribing. Also want to say hello to Trey Lanti, Marty Lang. We've got Justin Erickson, Ted McGuire, Jay Sunstern. We've got Arip Sarkar and Snoo all the way from Germany. Hello, and thank you for your support. If you're curious and wondering what my Patreon is about, it's all about sex work, obviously. You get a lot of sneak peeks and pretty much like a lot of stuff that you will not hear in the public. So video exclusive content that's only available on Patreon, like the lovely videos you'll be seeing today. We also have a bunch of bonus episodes, which I no longer do that's like publicly available, that I like to get a lot of people's insight on who I want to bring onto the show. So a lot of like sneak peeks, behind the scenes kind of work. Anything that's upcoming, any kind of seminars or guest lectures that I do, just some kind of cool stuff like that. But basically your money goes to help support the show, basically funding the website. And right now, specifically, your money is going to help my trip for XBiz in Miami, because that is like dangerously close to my wedding, and that is a lot of money as well to go to these adult industry events. So that's kind of where your money's going. If you're interested, it's patreon.com/strippedbysia, and we have got subscription prices starting from $4, and feel free to check it out. We also have Skyhawk After Dark TV, which is a adult industry network of other like-minded podcasts, videocasts, a lot of which you might have heard from some of the guests that have brought on the show. A lot of people have their own show as well, so I'm hoping that you folks will also go ahead and support, especially if you like similar content like this. Go ahead and check it out. It's skyhawkafterdarktv.com. And last but not least, just wanted to do a quick shout out to my sponsor, Fox Digital, who is the lovely person behind making my website, strippedbysia.com. I know a lot of us are always, or maybe are curious, or in the market of maybe getting a website done. Maybe you already have something done, but want to revamp or whatever it is that you choose. Anthony, who is my contact there, is offering people of Strip by Sia, so basically all of you lovely listeners at home, 20% off. Website's getting made. Go check it out. It is foxdigital.design. Okay, got this under 5 minutes. Hello, hello. I'm really excited. I also quickly want to apologize. It's been like running around all day, and I've literally have not had a break today, so I feel like I cannot speak properly. So if I sound awkward, that is why. It's because my mind's in a million places. But I am really excited to bring on today's guest. I'm super stoked. We're going to be talking about camming. We're going to be talking about her entry into the lovely world of adult. We're talking about big ass dildos and toys and all the things. And we're talking about some really cool niches that maybe you haven't heard of. We're talking about the future of creators. And I am super excited to bring this week's guest on. You might have heard of her. She goes by the name Katie Davis, or maybe you might know her as Toy Slut Katie. Toy Crazy Katie. What other names do you go by? All the things. But hello and welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am a big fan of the show, and talking to other adult industry professionals is my absolute favorite thing. It's so important to create community and share ideas and just stick together. So thank you so much for holding this space.
Hells yes. And thank you. Cause like you're like, hey, I love your show. This is really cool. And I'm like, hey, you're really cool. Like, do you want to come on and chat about all the things and like share your perspective? And you're like, hells yes. So here we are. Katie Davis, you're on the show today. Super stoked to have this conversation with you and just chat about all the things. For those of you who don't know, Katie is a creator, really, really big on OnlyFans. You got Fansly as well. Some really cool content that's coming out of you or coming into you. I don't know. All the things. You're also a YouTuber as well. You do a lot of really fun, creative things as well. So this is just a little glimpse of what I know from you from the internet. But maybe you want to tell the audience who you are in your own words and terms?
Yeah, no doubt. So I am a exhibitionist and independent porn performer. I am on all the content sites, and I spent many years as a cam girl, which low key is how I just like to identify, because I just think that the constant personality exchange and surveillance in camming, like the peering directly into somebody's world and having them face to camera address you, is just kind of the method that I take in all of the formats that I'm putting out, whether it's an OnlyFans video or a TikTok. I just like love thinking of myself as just, a cam girl above all else. So, yeah.
So cool. And like, camming is really putting yourself out there. I know a lot of us, being on the platforms and stuff too, there's a certain degree of, being on a platform, posting, pre-made videos and whatnot, but there really is an interesting concept and I don't know, like curiosity about like being live, and you can't edit that out. Like
Interpersonal, and it's just like public theater, you're like living performance art that anybody can tap into, at the same time as being a personal service, because I think camming just revolves around relationship creating and community building and making people feel like they're a part of something when they're a fan of yours and they're following your life. And the way that we see social media really taking precedence over all else in 2023, like there's this expectation for any sex worker to be really building their social media channels and constantly posting, and just that kind of just almost like obsessive documentation, I feel like comes from camming as well. It's like it's one thing to create little clips and create your porn videos, but these days we're just expected to promote using so many different platforms, and it's really that whole character building and like world building and personality formation that is, I don't know, I perceive that to be expected of us these days, to just really, really let our fans like see inside of our authentic lives in all of the different channels that they can.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. And even like going back to you're talking about like technology and like social media and stuff too, and how we're expected to be on all these platforms to help market ourselves because I mean, if you don't have a team, like many of us, like we're just doing it all independently, you have to put yourself out there. And also, like, people are really interested and invested in, learning about you, learning about your life, learning about your personality. And it's a lot to put out there, but also I feel like the reward is so good. It's so much fun.
I totally agree. And like the self-portraiture is so authored by your own spirit as well. So it's really how you want to package yourself in such a public domain that matters so much. So I think when I was first developing my kind of brand and what kind of impact I wanted my viewers to have when they saw me for the first time, I was really reaching into what I felt like my authentic erotic spirit was, because because it can be so emotionally taxing to have to document everything, have to post so many things. So you want it to feel natural, so it's not I personally find that there's more labor in performing something that's foreign to you than something that feels like it's from the heart and feels generative and feels like close to your comfort zone. So I think when I was first developing my brand, I was like, well, what do I actually like about sex, and how do I want to make people feel, and like what makes me feel good about performing. So the character that uh, the character that I'm like forming on the internet is very bubbly and very positive and just very eager to explore new things. And I've always been somebody that's been so connected to sex and so interested in everything that I can learn through having different hookups and through just presenting myself as a really free sexual being that can just come into any space and be seductive and be exciting and be like sprightly and youthful and just really full of verve and energy for the erotic world. So because I market myself so heavily around loving sex toys, that for me is just encompassing of the kind of like play space that we get from sex. Sex for me is really fun and inventive and just playful, like this secret little harbor that you can retreat into as an adult and just play around. So Katie Davis is very fun loving and easily excitable is really how I like to portray her.
I love that, and that really comes through a lot, even from like the very little that I know of you personally. Like it really does come along and amongst like your branding. Like I watched a few of your YouTube videos. Like you're really cheerful, playful is a really good word for sure. Bubbly, but also just really inviting and very sweet, which I like.
Yeah, it's important to be nice and kind and yeah, I just always want to leave the viewer with a really good, warm, connected feeling from engaging with my content.
I love that. But before we kind of go into like, yes, your branding and all that stuff and who you are, let's start at the very beginning. How did you get into all this? I believe you said that camming was your first entry point into sex work, but I'll let you tell your story from wherever you want to start.
You bet. Yeah. So as a freshman in college, I was a total slut, like downloaded Tinder the moment I stepped on campus. I was just really curious about getting to know people through sex and just eager to just fill up on life experience through having hookups. And I would just, take anybody home that I was curious about. For me, I don't even know if it was about the sex, but it was more about exploring different people and learning more about the world. So if somebody, like produced artwork that I really liked, played in a band that I liked, had a cool house, or I just wanted to know more about them, I was like, well, I have this format to deliver myself to your doorstep at a weird hour of the night, and we can have this short little exchange where I can ask you anything and you can get to know me, and we can create this kind of, performance in itself together. So I was just like racking through hookups that really gave me so much like fire and excitement. So when I started discovering that there was like an online marketplace for that kind of almost kind of like anonymous excitement that was connected globally, not only just the dating pool in my college town, it felt like a really natural progression. And so it was kind of just an experiment and something that was like felt like a hobby to me. So my first venture was I love talking about this app because I feel like there's very few people in 2023 that know how robust the selling community was on this app. Do you remember Kick?
Yes, I used to use Kick back in the day too.
Did
Yes.
you use it to sell content, or was it just a general sexting app for you? Because I feel like in the popular imagination, Kik was the sexting app.
Well, for me, it was a way that I spoke with a lot of what, like, with my sugar daddies back in the day.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
we communicated. But yeah, like I don't even know if people are still using that, but I know it was really big until there's a whole, I think there's a whole data leak for a little bit, and then people got off of it, and then I think people started to go back, but then I just wasn't one of those people. But sorry, go ahead, continue your story.
Yeah, I mean, I just knew that like that naughty things happened on Kick. So when I got in the mood to kind of like engage in the digital sphere of hookups, I just downloaded it. And there are groups on Kick that you could search and enter into. So I would search like hashtag sex or hashtag girls, and I found this huge community of like selling rooms. And Kick was very like the app still felt like it was, stuck in 2013, even when I was using it in like 2018. So it had all of these limitations. Like there were only a certain amount of guys allowed in groups, and the selling communities were extremely cliquey and hard to break into. You would join a selling group, and the girls that were running the group would just kick you out if they didn't know you. There were only 50 people allowed in a group. So I forget how I got my foot in the door, but I talked to some right person and got myself, quote unquote, verified as a seller. And then I joined like hundreds and hundreds of groups on Kick, and I started selling cam and content. So that was like, you'd pay a certain amount for like per minute cam or custom photos or clock rates. Kind of all of the things that we now have on our OnlyFans menus were commonplace on Kick. So it was very old school. Like you had to generate traffic in the group, and you had to verify buyers, and you had to kick non-buyers out of the groups. So it was a lot of labor on the phone to just constantly be posting your ad and just doing group management. And there were these networks of sellers that were very tight, so it would be like 30 girls running maybe 300 groups all together, and we'd just
Wow.
be sharing buyers, sharing information about buyers. And we had to go through the most specific hoops. Like we would verify clients when they joined, because not everybody would join these groups necessarily looking to purchase something. Sometimes somebody would join and they'd just be looking around, or they wouldn't know what kind of group it was. So we had to make every individual guy like verify with his ID and a live photo of him, touching his face in a specific way to make sure that he was of legal age to purchase content. And since that's how I started, it felt so normal. But there's no other platform on the internet where the sellers have to age verify their buyers that I can think of.
Totally. Right.
So I
Ahead of the
spent
time.
years. I Yeah, like I spent years on that app, and just all through college it was, I'm like updating the groups in between classes. And I got so into it because it really was like soothing the same kind of itch that I was seeking through random hookups. I would get the same feeling in my body, and I would be satisfied. And so I kind of just like stopped sleeping around for fun once I got into sex work. And it was I just immediately kind of felt like I had opened this portal to something that was like a dark and exciting and bigger than me. And it was almost frightening how much I threw myself into the work immediately, because I was totally distracted from my schoolwork, and all I wanted to do was spend 12 hours a day at home, like putting on my clothes and taking my clothes off and doing these like, 5-minute little striptease cam shows over and over and over again, and collecting small amounts of money and just getting really, really excited about it. So I just feel like as soon as I discovered sex work, I like made a like clear, swift exit from the like normal college student world, because it just felt so compelling to me and made me feel so good.
That's awesome. And that's like a story that I don't hear very often. Unless I remember talking about Kick with Delma Rosa of like the panty selling podcast. And Kick was a big thing for those kind of groups, people selling panties and like used hosiery and nylons and stuff like that. But such an interesting, unique way. So thank you to whoever introduced you to that, because now it seems to be completely life changing, obviously. I was wondering, like, when you were introduced to these groups, were you acknowledging that this was sex work right off the bat, or was it just like, oh, it's just something I'm doing for fun, and I'm just like, whatever, selling my nudes or whatever. But like, how are you digesting that information at that time?
Yeah, I was definitely conscious of it being sex work, and, we have such, like, socialized stigma around sex work, and I was really into, like, feminist literature at the time, so I had kinda consumed a lot of the Kool-Aid on how, sex is selling your body and porn is, like, sexual assault on tape, and I had read all of these, anti-porn, feminist, like, really violent rhetoric against sex work, so when I found this, I kind of internalized that I was doing something that was just bad and like anti-feminist and morally incorrect, but I liked it so much that I like swallowed that cognitive dissonance and kind of internalized a lot of not shame, but acceptance about what this meant for me. And it took so much like courage to do the unlearning, to decouple the assumption that I was now part of this like bad, evil empire and this network that was like anti women, like it was quite toxic. And I also in college was very much a party girl, was getting into all kinds of trouble, like was using drugs and alcohol too much, and I feared that this was kind of like a natural progression of this like good girl gone bad kind of narrative for myself. So I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I was like very afraid of being outed in my college town for doing this work. And it took a lot of pivots of my media consumption to kind of decouple this kind of moralizing tone to what I was doing, because I really had like guilt and mixed feelings that I was projecting on myself and just projecting on the whole industry, and that kind of thinking is what puts sex workers in danger. Like that kind of thinking is so violent in nature. And I think I had years of work around whorephobia to unravel. And really, what pulled me out of that kind of like indoctrinating spiral was finally taking sex workers at their word. And I remember somebody sent me a TED talk by an escort about a decrim debate. And her argument was very simple. It was just like, let brothel workers decide for themselves what kind of legal conditions they want to work under. And I was like, oh, you can't legislate based on a moral feeling. You have to let bottom up the people experiencing the concept like legislate around it, right? And that kind of like clicked something in my head, and I was like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad and so dark, and maybe I've had it wrong this entire time. And that kind of sparked a different journey for me, which got me out of the whole I'm engaging in this because it's bad and it feels good and I'm bad and I chase things that feel good, and put me into a place where I was like, wait, I could take this really seriously as a profession if I want to go in that direction. And is that right for me?
Wow. And that is quite a pivot because, like, I feel like there's a lot of internalized horophobia that maybe many of us go through. I know I myself am one of those people that, I was working through a lot of internalized horophobia for about 5 years. So basically, I started sugaring and then I started getting to stripping, and it took me 5 years. I entered the industry as a sugar baby, left the industry as a sugar baby, started stripping, and I was like, I don't know about this. And then one day, I don't know, I just had a moment where like, I want to do this, and why do I have to try to conform to what society tells me that I have to be like? I'm not an abused person. I'm not. I haven't been like traumatized or whatever they like to say about us. All the things that we've heard before,
Right.
but it takes a lot of work and also understanding. So I'm really glad that you had that moment and that shift for you. Is this when you started camming, or is this when you started kind of like looking at this more of from a business mindset, or?
Yeah, so I was camming pretty much all along because you would sell cam shows on Kick via Skype, like pay per
Oh,
minute.
oh
And
yeah, I remember
yeah,
those
so I
days.
different stints on like my free cams and Chatterbait and kind of like the live show model of things. But yeah, it's like I wanted to be anonymous as well when I got in. And maybe you can relate to this because like sugaring and stripping is like you kind of have to like meet face to face to like know who that person is. And like I liked Kick because you couldn't Google me. Like you had to enter these rooms to figure out who I was. And you know, like my cam name is Katie Davis. Like that's such a generic American name. You can't pick a more common name. And it's because I had this like whorephobia and like didn't want to be discovered and wanted to be super under the radar. But as soon as I kind of like did some of the work to free myself from a lot of like negativity and fear surrounding it, I was like, you know what? Like this is what I want my life to look like. Like this is something that can really that suits my spirit. You know, it's like I've always been somebody that's really creative, entrepreneurial, attracted to kind of, you know, subcultures and non-conventional styles of living. So this made a lot of sense for me. And when that all clicked, I was like, I can lean into this and there's nothing that, you know, I need to reject. I can, like, this can be me. And I think that was around the time I started like consuming your podcast and I was reading all of the blogs and I watched every documentary and I wrote this like 30-page paper in my college feminist media studies class about like camming as a neoliberal and post-feminist model. And I spent like months and months watching my free cams every single night, like looking at these girls and just trying to do the research on what my life was going to look like if I chose this as a path versus it being, you know, a side job in college. And I was a little scared because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to walk away from how good this made me feel. And it took, you know, like years of research really to be completely confident in this is what I want for myself and this is what's right for me. And I think I was designed for this. And I need to give myself myself the very best shot to have the very best life that I can within industry. And that is doing something with my whole heart and with no shame and being, you know, really excited every day to have chosen this. So I had years of fear, but I can like honestly say I've never ever regretted my choice to enter adult industry once. As much as I was kind of planning back then for fear into the future, I ended up with kind of the life of my dreams and I couldn't be happier to call this my career.
That's incredible. And like it's so nice to hear that too, by the way. I was curious too, because I know like with Kick and stuff too, like you want to stay anonymous. It's a little bit different. There's a bit of a barrier there too. When did that kind of shift into like, okay, I'm comfortable like being faced out and really honing down on who Katie Davis is?
No doubt. Yeah, I think I had hit kind of all of the milestones that I wanted to on Kick. Like I felt like Kick was limiting my growth. Like I had like reached kind of the top of my capacity there. And that's when I started working on a bunch of different campsites, like a bunch of different Skype directories. And then shortly after I started an OnlyFans at like the very start of 2020, like Beyonce had just name dropped it. Like we had become as common in a household as a loaf of bread around the same time as TikTok. It really just like exploded onto the scene. And I was like, you know what, let's do the social media game. Like, let's go. Like, this is what I want. Like, I am not concerned about facial recognition in 15 years. Like, I'm not concerned about everybody in my hometown finding out. Like, what I'm experiencing now is worth way more than any of those, you know, fearful consequences. And then OnlyFans was just like, you know, the world is ending. And I absolutely channeled all of my energy into that kind of work. Like it was fully 16-hour days for like a year straight. And I briefly mentioned that, you know, I used to be a party girl in college and like I loved going out. And it's like that kind of like, you know, addictive, destructive energy channeled really, really nicely into spending all of my time building my brand. So
Wow,
2020
yeah.
was definitely like cooking in the kitchen, just like addicted to the numbers and just total sacrifice in kind of just seeing what my platform could look like in that space. So that was a fun little like break from the world. It feels insane think back at it, but at the time it felt so good.
Totally. And I know obviously the pandemic, a lot of things were out of our control. But also you also had a shift during that time, you know, going from camming on Kick and stuff to these major platforms. Was it difficult to try to find what your niche was at that time and trying to determine what that niche was? Like I know you make a lot of content on toy content and reviews and stuff like that. But was it always like that from right from the get-go, or like a lot of experimentation in the beginning?
Yeah, good question. No, I definitely try to differentiate myself. I think it was the end of 2020 where I was like, okay, I need a niche because, college girl next door is not working for me. Like everyone's doing it, right? Like I look like every other girl on the internet. And a friend actually recommended it to me that, she pointed out my giant toy collection and was like, you need to be Katie Big Toys. Like you need to really lean into this whole dildo thing because I've been obsessed with sex toys forever. And I didn't see a lot of OnlyFans girls really marketing that themselves that way. There were a couple other performers in the space that were doing it, and they were mostly doing like hardcore anal. And I felt like I was the only kind of like girl next door, like innocent kind of face that was into sex toys. So that's kind of why I picked it. And it just feels so like colorful and fun to me as well. So, and my special talent, I say this all the time. I'm like, if you're good at something, share it with the world. And I have a very expansive vagina that can, I can cram giant things inside. And I
Right.
learned later that not everybody can do that. So I figured I might as well put it in my name.
Yeah, definitely. And like I mean the pure elasticity that you have it is a talent. Seriously, because I've seen some pictures of like that giant seahorse like dildo thing that you have, and I'm just like, is that for real? Like that's wild.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's really cool that you were really able to lean in on that. And I mean, if it's something you already like to do and you've already started collecting that, even from right from the get go, even before all this started, why not just like turn that into your niche, which I think is so smart of you, because a lot of people don't. Like a lot of people really try to think so out of the box, but then it becomes so unnatural, and then that's at the point where it becomes being like work, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, and our own emotional sustainability in all this is just so paramount. I say that like the hardest part of sex work is the kind of mental gymnastics that you have to do to make yourself excited to work and to just really like manage the highs and lows of earning inconsistent money and having to be a self-starter and having a to-do list that never really ends. So I think the best thing we can do for ourselves is lean into conditions that we actually feel excited about. And I love dildos. They're so playful. I feel like they're also a little bit inherently queer. I feel like using sex toys during sex feels like kind of queering what sex is. And I'm bisexual, and I love that I get to, really publish my sexuality on the internet because, my audience is mostly men, right? But like men love lesbian porn. So I adore that I get to like hook up with so many pretty interesting, intelligent friends of mine and just really like lean into my sapphic side and not have to be shy or like hide that about myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I love hearing that too, because I think it's really important. And like, maybe those who are starting out, like, and I've kind of like talked about this on the show too briefly, but really, like when you get started, sometimes you feel like, okay, I gotta, cast a wide net and like offer all the things, which I actually think is like really dangerous. Well, not dangerous, but like really tiring and cumbersome when you're trying to offer everything. And sometimes you don't even know your boundaries when you first start too, which can also be dangerous when you're trying to be like, okay, like somebody's asking me this, and or for example, like in the world of cam, like, oh, do you do X, or do you have this toy, or blah blah blah, and I just like say no, I don't offer that because that's just not who I am. And I just feel like a lot of people's integrity can get lost in this industry, which we often don't talk about that. So I wonder if you had any comments on that.
No, I think that's really poignant because, yeah, I mean, it's important to niche yourself because I think everybody is doing everything. And I think we all kind of just look so similar, and picking something that makes you memorable, whether it's a specific act that you're good at or a specific way that you look, like maybe you're always wearing the same item, something that can make you memorable in men's minds is, so crucial. And like I said, everybody's doing everything, so you don't have to do everything. These guys that subscribe to me on OnlyFans, they're subscribed to like 30 other girls. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to do anal. There are millions of girls that are doing anal. So I think it's really important to do things at your own pace so that when you engage in anything new in the space, you're really excited to explore it. Like something I've been exploring this year is doing public content. Like I'm doing like
Yeah.
clips and like
Love
posting
it.
on Pornhub, walking down the street naked, and like having sex in various commercial stores. And that's like, as soon as I realized I had a kink for that or a spark about it, I was like, this is so cool because I'm getting to diarize, exploring this new subsect of my sexuality, and I can do this on camera. So, I haven't really gotten into too much extreme anal yet is another example of one of my boundaries. Like I'll take a plug, everybody, like, but I haven't put like really big things in my ass because I know that when I explore anal, I want it to come from a place of like deep curiosity and willingness and enthusiasm. Because, if you're doing something you don't want to do on camera, that translates. I think the best
Yeah.
porn I've ever made is the ones where I'm just so thrilled to be here. And, I mentioned being able to publish my lesbian sex tapes because it's so cool to watch me with a new person that I've had a crush on. Maybe I've watched their porn, we've been mutual friends forever, and we're finally getting our hands on each other. There's just such magic in being able to capture that authentic moment of like, holy moly, we're really here, we're really into each other, and this is really our jobs. Like we're getting paid to have these kinds of experiences. And I think it's about leaning into your magic and what makes you feel good that is so crucial to sustainability in this industry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, what I know we were talking about some stuff before the show too, but like I know what we wanted to discuss was like maybe some other niches that people might be interested in, or perhaps that you are noticing that are trendy right now. But would definitely love to hear your thoughts on that too. I'm also into the whole public thing as well. It's a lot of fun. My fans love that. They're like, "Oh, where else can you go?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'll have to find some places." But yeah, is there anything else on your list, or maybe on your bucket list that you want to do? Or
Cool. I love that you're into that. Things that I want to do that I haven't done yet. I'm on a mission in 2023 to have just like a bunch of group sex. Like I I didn't have a ton of threesomes in my catalog or foursomes or more sums before the year started, and I've been filming so much, and now I have like 15 threesome slash moresome scenes in my library. So, I get on Twitter and I'm like, I have the most lesbian content of anybody on OnlyFans. And it's like, no one can judge whether you have the most lesbian content of anybody on OnlyFans. But I think when you pick a new niche or a new kink that you want to explore, it's that kind of language where it's like, nobody has the hottest, like, I have hotter foot fetish videos than anybody else. Or, I'm really good at like food splooshing or whatever weird kink it is that you want to explore. And also not having kinks is okay too, because
yeah,
there's huge markets for vanilla buyers, there's huge markets for girlfriend experience, and like going back to how camming really gives such an intimate view into somebody's world and just feels like you're on FaceTime with like your special lover. I
yeah,
think that girlfriend experience and just creating real relationships, prioritizing quality over quantity is so crucial. Like a piece of advice that I have for anybody starting out is just like foster your relationships with your regulars. I have regulars that have been with me for like 4 years and that are so important to me. You mentioned going to XBiz. I went to my first AVN in 2023 and I got to meet some of my
yeah,
fans. And it was just like so amazing to like finally give a hug to these people that I know so well, that know me so well, that have just been so invested in my journey and have just played such a big role in like my happiness about my work. So I just really think that it's like relationship based and community building, and you know that 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 piece is just so crucial to what we're doing here.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I always say that, like, as soon as you start to be a digital creator or whatever, a model or any kind of independent creator, It really is a lot of customer service. It's like a customer service job. It's a lot of relationship maintenance. You have to be able to be available for your fans and be there and really put quality like effort into it. At least that's how I see it, because like they can feel when you're being distant. They can feel and sense, because they are your friends. They know you so well, or at least they know who your persona is. That's really important to pay attention to these people, because it only takes a few loyal followers and fans for that to like really grow and foster. So it's, I think it's what you said earlier, is just, yeah, really taking the time to make time for your fans, because sometimes people feel like, okay, well, I don't have time to do this, but you actually need to make the time for them.
You're so right. And I think it's about easily identifying what kind of experience people are looking for, because I get guys on my page that just love the big toys and want like, hardcore bing bang be a hole, which I love doing. I'm like, okay, I'm a fleshlight, I'm a hole for fucking. And then you get the guys that are softer and want to actually start a relationship. And it's like, oh, okay, like how can I reach your heart and how can I communicate to you like a whole person and be this kind of like secret keeper and confidant for you. And I'm sure you have so many skills about that from the strip club, like the guys that are looking to party versus the guys that are looking to make a confession. And
Yes.
yeah, so I think it's not only knowing your niche, but like knowing your buyers and what kind of different types of guys are attracted to you and like what your kind of areas of, personalities that are going to come your way and how to deal with them appropriately.
Yeah, definitely, like really identifying who your audience is, who makes up your audience, because there's so many different fans that are out there. Like I love, especially for me and Cam specifically, it's a lot of like GFE. They really want to be able to like feel like they're there with you and really like be intimate with you in that kind of sense. And then of course, I have some people at the club, of course they're just like, yeah, wanting to party, have a good time, make it rain kind of thing. And then you have your other ones that are just like, I just really want to worship you. So you you have to be able to identify like what kind of person they are and really hone in on that and really be able to cater to that. I think that's such a good strategy for sure.
What site are you camming on right now?
I'm on Streammate.
You're on Streamate. Cool. Yeah, I feel like that's the big one in the space these days.
Yeah, I love it. It's been so good. I like when I first started camming back in like 2020, I started on microcams, and that was an interesting experience for sure, but then it wasn't enough for me to stay on. It was when like something that we were talking about earlier before recording, we were talking about like, you know, sometimes sex work's not for everyone, and you're allowed to dip your toes in something, try it out, see how you feel about it, and then decide, okay, maybe it's not it for me. That platform was not for me. But I find that there's so much similarities with Streammate and say like the strip club, with like, okay, your free shows, that's me on stage, and then there's like a group show, and then there's your exclusive one-on-one VIP experience. So it's a lot of fun. I really like it.
I hear that. Streammate is really big in the space right now, whereas I think My Free Cams kind of like was huge in maybe like 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Yeah.
I think the cam sites were big, and then like premium Snapchat got really big, and then OnlyFans
Yes.
was kind of a natural progression of that premium Snapchat because it was, content behind a paywall with like the chat feature. Um, and camming is still alive and well, but it's interesting to see these sites kind of like rise and fall the way you're right. Like Kick isn't around anymore. And I feel like everything in adult industry kind of has sort of like a 3 to 5 year lifespan. And something that excites me so much about the space is that you're constantly having to reinvent and adjust to the next challenge. Like I've only ever had maybe like 6 months at a time where I feel like I've like completely mastered something and I like know how the site works. And then something changes in the market or internally or just culturally, and you're having to play catch up and like adjust to this ever changing new level of the video game, which is really exciting to somebody that gets bored easily.
Yeah, no, and then that's so true too, because like there really is an evolution when it comes to the online world for sure. So even like when you're talking about early on the history of cam in the beginning for yourself, it was like maybe Kick, and then like say sites like Chatterbait and like My Free Cams were really big during a time, and it still is big for a lot of creators as well. But then also like having these platforms here, having I want to say like Snapchat was before OnlyFans and all that stuff too, and then now we're just kind of waiting to see what is the next big thing, because it just seems like all the platforms are starting to integrate features of like live streaming and chatting, and just more and more access is basically the trend that I'm seeing. The overarching trend is just like they want more access to you. They really want to be able to
Right.
know you. So it's been fascinating.
Right. Yeah, and that's also the social media piece, like that's like, oh, like to perform on OnlyFans these days because in my humble opinion, I think 2020 money on OnlyFans in the way that you could build a page from nothing, all built on internal traffic and still be kind of anonymous, just be sharing resources with other models to pass fans around. It's so much harder to do that these days. It's like
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
social media is king right now, and you just need to be active on every single platform and posting all day long on every single platform. And that's kind of the wave that OnlyFans has taken. And yeah, I think that obsessive documentation, like surveillance of social media is that more access piece that you were talking about. What do you think is next? I have a theory, but I'm curious if you have one too.
Gosh, what's next? Like, I don't know. Everyone's been talking a lot about like artificial intelligence and really trying to incorporate that into your sex work, and like trying to utilize and manipulate AI to boost maybe your SEO or your marketing tactics. I know I was speaking with Melrose Michaels, and this was a few weeks ago now. They're just out currently at the time of recording, like last week. But anyways, it was cool because she was saying like, and she hasn't done this yet, but like she's even curious about like, like deep fake porn, putting her own face on some kind of porn video for some services that she doesn't offer, like boy girl content. She doesn't do boy girl content, so she would be interested, like, oh, why don't I put my face on some other person's content, or not some other person's content, but other kind of content that's existing, and try to see if we can sell it that way. Or who knows if there's going to be like AI robots that you can chat with, but if you want the primo shit, then you have to pay for it to speak with the actual creator themselves. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be moving in that kind of direction. I don't know yet, but we shall see. But I'm curious
Yeah.
to hear about your thoughts.
Well, I love Melrose Michael's take on it. Personally, I think deep faking is amazing. Like, I would love to have my clients be able to be like, oh, threesome with Katie and the girl at my coffee shop or with my
Yeah.
secretary, whatever. I think that that's hilarious and I love it. And I love the pitch that we get to design our own kind of languages for the AI to spit back out. Like, you input values about how you speak and the things that turn you on. And then it's, created like Katie 2.0 when Katie's not
Yeah.
around. Personally, I am so stoked for virtual reality porn to be more accessible because all I want is to create a porno where I get to like physically walk into somebody's bedroom and be in their bedroom and be in their space. Like, I want to create that kind of, IRL cam girl experience. Like, I want to reach through the screen and like touch the guy that's watching me. So being able to create that kind of content is like so what I want to be able to produce in like a few years.
Totally. Yeah. I was speaking with Lindsay Banks, or Banksy, as a lot of people know her, as well, who was speaking about virtual reality porn and how that is so getting so big right now. It's not quite there, but she's also really excited to be like, okay, this is probably the next big thing that's coming, because it is so real. Like, you're almost there. And can you imagine like being a fan? Like, that's awesome. Like, you almost have it's almost real. So it's like one dimension away from it being a real encounter, if you know what I mean. So, but
Yeah, and the other theory is, my friend Bambi Blue always says this. She's like, "We're gonna make a full circle back to real encounters. Like, there will be a resurgence of clients looking for escorts, and strip clubs are gonna have a new heyday because people wanna see in person. We're gonna get sick of screens and go back to the real thing."
that's cool too. That's a really, really, really cool way of thinking about it as well. Because like right now, at least here in British Columbia, where I'm based out of in Canada, like it's the opposite. It's all about like strip clubs are closing down. Not many are opening up right now, and we're becoming extinct. But that's cool because there's so much online content and online content being driven too, that maybe we are going to get sick of that. You just want like human connection. So
Right.
TBD. Also,
And the
I'm a fan of Bambi Blue too, so I'm like, maybe I'll have to get them on the show at some
Oh,
point.
she's my best friend. She mentored me in all things OnlyFans. She plucked me off a campsite and I was her referral. So she's kind of like the reason I had such a big start on OnlyFans. She's a great coach and mentor in the industry.
So cool. I will be sliding to the DMs. But yeah, that's really, really fascinating. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'm curious to see what's going to be offered next, but I'm curious too for whoever's listening at home. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are for whatever you think is next, because as you know, this world is constantly moving, evolutionizing as we speak. So if you have comments on this, at us. We definitely want to hear your opinions on all the things. So please reach out to us. I'd love to continue the conversation on Twitter or wherever you are online. So, but there are a couple questions that did come in from the audience as well. I feel like it might be time for us to move to that portion of the show, unless you want to have any other words to say, wrapping up the conversation here, or
I would love to hear listener questions.
Absolutely. So again, it's very toy focused because I think a lot of people know you from that. But this person is asking, how big is quote unquote big? And I guess they might be referring to your toys.
I would say big is when your pussy realizes that it's being stretched more than it normally is. Yeah, I would say that's so subjective. Everybody's interior looks different. It's funny in health class they teach us that a vagina is like a canal, like a straight passageway. When the truth is, when you get a hand in there, you can see that there's all kinds of nooks and crannies and crevices, and everybody kind of feels different on the inside as well. Um, and obviously, when you're aroused, you go through like vaginal tensing, like blood rushes to the area, and your muscles kind of expand and allow more room for something to fit in. So, I also always say, I'm like, the vagina's a muscle. When you work out a muscle, it gets tighter, not looser, right? So, if you do have practice with big things, it will actually increase your tightness and just the capacity of that muscle to be used. So yeah, I would say, my first big toy was like something that I consider mid-sized today, but the first time I put it in me, I was like, oh, this is so girthy and this is so cool and like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I would say just, work your way up to figure out what's big for your pussy's judgment.
This listener from Instagram is asking, how many toys does Katie have in her collection?
Like 300. I have so many. And I'm particular.
God.
I'm a little nerd. Like I won't, guys sometimes will try to buy me like Amazon sex toys or like random things, but I'm a diva and I'm particular and I want like 100% medical grade silicone and I want everything in my collection to be something that I can wholeheartedly recommend, something that looks good on the shelf, something that I have a personal history with. So I only keep the toys that are really, like have my seal of approval. But I'm at the point where like all these toy companies are like sending me things and stuff and I'm getting to try things from brands that I used to like purchase from and cherish. And I'm currently like moving. So I had a big bookshelf in my last house, like giant bookshelf, just decorated with little like risers and kind of had like all my toys stacked at various levels. And I'm trying to figure out where to put them in my new house. I have a linen closet that I think I'm going to put like sparkly wallpaper down on all the sides of it and then replace the dildos there so you can just like open the cabinet and see all the little friends staring back at you. But it's not just dildos. I like vibes and butt plugs and like weird sex tech as well.
Cool. Well, you'll have to show that on your YouTube channel later, like do a tour or something. That sounds freaking cool. Amazing.
Boy tour, that's a great
idea. Let me just double check here. Do you have any favorite toys? If so, what is your favorite? And how can you choose out of that many?
Yeah. Okay. So my house is burning down. There's a fire. You can only grab one toy and you got to run. Like the toy that I would take with me is the We Vibe Melt. It's a sound pressure air toy. So it's like the womanizer, the satisfier. And I've tried all of the ones in that like class of toys, my favorite is the We Vibe Melt. I just think it's so perfect. And every time I nut on it, I get like 30 orgasms in. Like I'll just like lay there for 2 hours and won't be able to stop. So that's kind of like it gets the most mileage of all my toys. So I would say that is my absolute favorite. But for dildos, I really love Uberme. I love Mr. Hanky's toys. I love Vic Skin. And there's a lot of like smaller indie toy companies that I really love and recommend. I'm a sucker for something like colorful and artsy that looks good on a shelf. So like my second favorite after that one vibe that gets mileage is kind of anything soft and beautiful and pliable and gorgeous and decorative. Dildo making is such an art.
Yeah, I saw your eggplant one, and I'm just like, that looks like the eggplant emoji.
Yeah,
Like,
that's my Self Delve. They're this German toy company. They do. I have a candy cane dildo that's by them, and they do like a carrot and an asparagus and a corn
oh
cob.
my
And
god.
there's all kinds of like representational objects. And OnlyFans hasn't taken that down yet. Like you're not allowed to fuck non-sex toys on OnlyFans. I have plenty of videos of me like fucking a cucumber or fucking a traffic cone or fucking like something I shouldn't be fucking. But the dildos that look like the thing that you shouldn't be fucking are allowed on OnlyFans. So,
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
do you have a favorite sex toy?
Me? Oh gosh, I am very experimental in terms of like I'm very new to it. The only one that I have is one I can't even know. I don't even know the name, but it's a Lilo one that it's pink and then it has like the vibrating part on your clit. That is really nice. That I found is really good, but I need to try more. Yeah. And like an old sugar daddy person bought that for me because I was like, well, I really want to be able to explore myself a bit more. And that's been the only one I have for now, unless maybe you can tell me otherwise what else I should get or what else I should experiment with. Because
I
you
would
seem like
say try one of the suction pressure toys. Like get yourself a womanizer or get yourself the We Vibe Melt. The Satisfier I think is like between $40 and $50. So that's a really affordable way to figure out if like that kind of sensation is good for you because it just feels like a tapping on your clit. It feels like some soft suction and like it feels like or they say it's an oral sex toy because it's like a tongue just gently tapping on your clit. So I would try
oh,
that and see if you're
cool.
into it.
Yeah, I love like a lot of like clitoral stimulation. Like for me, that feels really good. Like I'm really into that. So yeah, we'll definitely talk and get more of your recommendations after the show for sure. This person is writing in. How do you train yourself to take bigger toys?
Yeah, so I mean, not I don't know why I have an expansive vagina. I just like do. Like I would be like I can be fisted with no lube if I'm like horny enough. Like my pussy will just like eat an entire fist. So
Wow.
so I would say if you don't if you have like a tighter system, which is like totally normal, I would say work your way up, have real orgasms before. Like I would say lay there with your favorite vibrator, nothing inserted, and like have one or two orgasms to just like make sure that you're all lubricated there, you're turned on and you're in the mood. If you're trying to shove something in there before you actually fully desire it with your whole body, it's just going to be an unpleasant experience. So you want to like wait until your holes just want to like eat whatever you feed it because you're just like so hungry to be penetrated at that point. And then I would say start with like a smaller dildo in your collection. Bug yourself like really hard. Like I would say really try to get it nice and lubricated and warmed up. Good lube as well. A lube that is water based but maybe designed for anal pleasure. So the lube is a little bit more viscous and lasts a little bit longer. I would recommend with any kind of like heavy penetration. So yeah, lube, I will put some on my fingers and put it inside myself as well as putting it on my opening and putting it all down the
Oh,
toilet.
gotcha.
Yeah, and then I'll fuck myself with a smaller toy until that feels easy, and then I'll pick a mid-sized toy and I'll fuck myself with that. And then when I move to an actual really big toy, I think the key is not to rush it. I think if you just like set it on the ground and like position yourself over the tip, bring back out that vibrator and just try to like slowly ease yourself down on it. Even if you can only take the top like 20%, I would say like sit there with your clit and watch the way your insides just kind of widen and accept more as your more turned on. And yeah, and I would just say like don't push it, you know, you don't want to like be sore after. But I would say carve out a good amount of time. Like personally, when I like to masturbate, I'm not the type that will like rub one out before the Uber is supposed to come or before an appointment, whatever. Like I will set aside 2 hours in the evening to really have a long sesh with myself and get into it. So I would say big toy play when you have like a total afternoon devoted to your own pleasure and you can really like look forward to it, get into it, put on the music that you like, whatever kind of rituals you have to turn yourself on. You want to create really good and sexy conditions around it. So there's not like a pressure situation or you're really, cognizant that you're doing something that you don't think you can do. You want to really approach it with a lot of enthusiasm and curiosity. And I think you'd be surprised. Like the human body is so it like I learn new things about the human body all the time. So I think giving yourself room to be wowed with what you can do is also a good kind of mental piece.
Yeah, no, that's all really, really good sound advice too, especially the not rushing thing. I feel like sometimes so many people are like, oh, I gotta get going, but like having enough time for yourself and putting that time aside for yourself is so important. Not just for any kind of like masturbation, but just for like anything in general. So, the last question here is in regards to safety. So, what are some common mistakes that people undertake when getting a large sex toy? And what was this thing here? Yeah, so basically, as to not injure yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is make sure that everything is body safe. I mentioned really briefly a lot of toys on Amazon aren't body safe. They're made of like jelly materials and they're porous and they could harbor bacteria or transmit things. And you want to make sure that you have only 100% medical quality silicone. And it'll say that right on the box. If it says anything like that isn't that, it's going to be a porous, unsafe substance. And even glass toys are porous, unfortunately. So it's really like you want to just stick with silicone. And then the other piece of advice I have as well, water-based lube. You want to make sure you're not putting anything silicone-based inside yourself and you're experimenting with lubes and you know what's okay for your pH. And because a lot of the cheaper lubes will kind of disrupt your own vaginal flora and fauna. And soft toys for heavy penetration are really important. I find that hard toys like stiffer silicone can be good for like ramming and squirting and like, you know, if you're really into that kind of like heavy thrusting, hitting it on your cervix, then they can be nice. But when you're doing size play, really, really, really soft silicone. So often that's dual density dildos. So they have like a stiff inner core to support the shape of the toy and a really soft exterior so your insides can really like softly grip around onto it is quite helpful. And then I would say always clean your toys. I don't use any toy cleaner. I just do soap and water, but I'm very particular about making sure that the toys are washed before and after use. And I'm not using my hands to touch myself if they're not freshly washed. So if I like wash my hands, touch the dildo, touch my phone, I have to wash my hands again because the phone's full of bacteria and I don't want to be putting anything unclean on my junk. So those are kind of my safety pieces. Do you have anything to add to that? Because I think that's a great question.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely. You, in addition to what you said about the lube, making sure that you're using enough of it, because
Mhm.
sometimes people are not, or people are lube shy, or people have lube stigma, which I find very odd sometimes, and especially when it comes to like younger people, they're like
Yeah,
ashamed that they need lube. No, you need lube for any kind of toy play, or even just for any kind of sex, really. That's for me a safe kind of tip that you can use. So that's probably what I would add to that.
totally
But yeah, good
agree.
question for sure. Thank you, listener. But before we let you go, Katie, where can we all find you?
So I am on OnlyFans and Fansly as Toy Crazy Katie. On Twitter, which is a great way to get a hold of me, I am Katie Big Toys. My YouTube is Toy Crazy Katie. And if you search KT Davy, so it's KTDAVII3, you will find my Instagram, and I have the same name on TikTok as well. So all the platforms. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to be invited on the pod.
No, it was super great. And thanks for just all the knowledge that you have had and you were able to share today as well. I think it's so interesting. And I just like love how nerdy you are about everything as well in terms of like the world of camming and also just talking about the future for creators as well. I think it's really kind of cool to see that insight and to share that with the audience. For everyone else listening at home, it's Stripped by Sia on all podcast platforms. So if you're an Apple, I would love and appreciate a 5-star rating as well as a lovely review. I love reading all your reviews, so feel free to do that if you have time. Same thing goes for Spotify. And for everyone else, if you want to get in touch with me, it's Stripped by Sia on Instagram and on Twitter. That's probably the best way to get in contact with myself. Or you can also write me at strippedbysia.com. I've got a form there you can kind of fill in if you're wanting to be on the show. Go pitch yourself to me, or if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear from from you. And I guess that's pretty much it. New episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight. My brain is dead today. We'll see everyone in for another episode next Sunday. Thank you so much, Katie. It's a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.